Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Fairchild in Clearwater County. And in this episode, we have a ton of really fun stuff to do. We are going to talk about a few mods that I added to the build and add a bunch of unique buildings to this community. But before we get to that, I want to fix a couple of things. First of all, you might have seen that there's a bit of traffic around here. And there's a good reason for that. There's also a good reason for all of the parking that you'll see along this dirt road leading up to our county park. So the reason why we're seeing all of this is because there's actually no parking on any of these roads. In fact, even on Main Street, because we've added the roads with the trees, no parking. So this little parking lot here, filled to the brim, and people are circling around, desperate to find a place to park. Apparently even willing to fly through the sheriff's department to get to an empty spot and park on top of a car. So what we're seeing here, this is really interesting. If we take a look, check this out. So what we have happening here is people circulating all around to try to find a parking space, circulating through here, parking on this road, Williams Road, up to this overlook. They're parking along here and using all the paths that we put in to get to their homes. That was not the intention of placing these here, so we're going to try to rectify that now. The other thing that this does that is really interesting is you can see that there's a lot of traffic in the community, which Main Street traffic is good traffic. Traffic on Williams Road, not so good. Not so good. So let's go through here. You might have noticed this is a good time to talk about some of the mods I've introduced to the build as well. So I changed the toolbar from, I believe I had better toolbar. No, still have that. Regardless, what I've added is yet another toolbar. And the reason why I've done this is I wanted to scale down the UI. I'm filming in 4K. So the UI, being as large as it was, took up a lot of real estate. So being able to use yet another toolbar, which gives me the ability to scale this a bit better. When we pop through here, what you'll notice is that it's just, I was able to move it over, get it to line up a little better, and fit the screen a bit better. So I've also added smooth scrolling. So when I scroll through here, it's a little bit smoother than it used to be. And I've added advanced building level control, which we will get to in just a minute as well. So here, let's go ahead and go to our rural roads, and you'll notice that I don't think any of these really offer parking, but we're gonna try. Yep, no parking here. So we are unfortunately going to have to be a little bit selective with some of our big suburbs parking roads. So we're gonna upgrade a few of these roads. I don't wanna upgrade the entire community. That's not my goal, but I do wanna upgrade most likely the block behind Main Street and provide some parking throughout here. This will also add sidewalks, and I do think that there would be targeted locations to the community where you see some sidewalks. So we have two different assets. We have our worn streets, and I think that in a place like this, that would make perfect sense. This is a rural community. Most of the funding for the road reconstruction here would come from the state, but you have to have matching funds for most of that. And you can imagine that a community this size wouldn't necessarily always have the matching funds to upgrade every road when they want to do so. So I'm going to turn off collision, which I always end up forgetting to disable. So I'm going to make a point to not forget it. We'll see if I actually follow through with that. Okay, so that gives us some on-street parking and some sidewalks, which I like. When we come and look in here, what you'll see is that there's a mixture of pavements, mixture of roadway conditions, and that makes total sense to me as well. So now that we can have a few people park in front of their house, hopefully some of this situation will improve. I'm gonna let this run for a minute and see if things do get better. Okay, so we can see that some street parking is now occurring on some of these side streets, but we still have a great deal of parking here. I'm gonna go through and take a look at my rural roads and see if maybe some of these county roads that we have, such as this big suburb road, yeah, this might do the trick for us. I want to disable zoning here though. I don't want that to be a thing. So if we go through here and add these, we get the same effect without all the parking. Now, if I do this I'm going to need to add a parking lot up here. Doesn't need to be extravagant, but we're going to need something. We do get that funky pavement bit up here, so I'm going to convert a bit of this back down. And I cannot get away with it. So we are going to here's what we're going to do. We'll just convert this back to the regular one, and then I am going to restrict parking along this segment. Okay, so to do that, I go here into the parking restrictions, I hold down Shift, and that allows me to select the entire road. I'm going to zoom out just to make sure. Yeah, no parking anywhere up here. A little bit of parking right here, and I'm going to actually add a little bit of parking by our gate. I'm okay with people parking to go to the park, but I don't want them parking to go to their homes. It's not what we were trying to do. I'm also going to steal this and see if I can find an appropriate place up here for that lot. And of course, I forgot collision. So we'll just move this and get that working really well. And there we go. That should be good enough here. Like that a lot more. Now all that crazy funky parking's gone, and we're seeing it on the side streets where we would anticipate it. Much better. All right, there's one more consideration in terms of traffic that we want to think about too. So I was zooming around Ashland and I noticed that we have a whole bunch of movements coming through here. So apparently, drivers are noticing that there's a red light and they can turn right on red. So they're deciding to come through here and cut through. That is not the intention. So we're going to make this much less attractive. The way that we're going to do that is I could just set the speed limit much, much lower. So that's one way to kind of cheese it a bit. The other thing I could do is have some vehicular restrictions in that area. And I think that we're absolutely going to do that. Okay, so what I've done is I've prioritized this through movement here. I've added another movement where you'd have to stop here, prioritizing this entryway. So we're really prioritizing the entryways into Walmart rather than this through movement here, slowing the speeds down, and hopefully that'll discourage some of this. It appears to not be doing anything, which, frustrating. Not a ton that I can do about it. And I'm wondering if this is pathfinding. You can see it here. We have this just lit up. I'm going to speed this up again and see if this improves. Maybe the pathfinding will change after a little while. It is not. We actually have semis going through there, which I find to be most problematic. So let's do a little bit more work here and see if there's anything that we can do to improve this. So I'm going to let vehicles proceed through here. For some reason, they're slowing down. Hopefully that helps. Now they're zooming through. Where's this guy going? Ah, cutting through. Cutting through. There's not many, but there's just a couple that decide to make that movement. One way to resolve that is to remove the freight movement through here. Now, hopefully, then there's only one way in. They could circulate around. And you can see that this is creating some traffic issues that we're going to need to resolve soon. But that's not a today thing. That's a soon thing. And while we're in other communities, I wanted to come back over here. So one of the reasons I wanted to add forced level up is I noticed I keep having these level 1 buildings for American Eclectic sneak in. They are going to stay as level 1 buildings because I don't have enough parks here. They're not looking at the value of living next to a golf course. So as a result, we get these. So I'm going to force these to level up. So we'll upgrade these so that they become homes. So I should probably just look at Elk Square generally, set it to level 2 and force an upgrade on everything in Elk Square. Okay, so, but not really the way I would have preferred to handle that, but it did the trick. I don't want to force them to remain historical because we have some homes here that are kind of small, and truthfully, I think that a case could be made. Well, let's go to level 3 and force an upgrade of all of these to level 3. We have some duplexes showing up here that I don't love, but I think I'm going to save this challenge for another day. It's going to take some work, and I want to make sure that we get it right. Oh, a little bit of trouble here at Mulligan Trail. That is quite unfortunate, but that reminds me of another thing we have to do. Applegate Park. This was something that was mentioned in the comments. Realism Heights County Park. It is the height of realism. So with that, the last fix we need to take a look at is here at the Aldi's parking lot, and using the power of YouTube, I am going to spin this around so that rather than needing to walk down the drive aisle to get into your aisle, they line up with the store, which makes a ton more sense. Gets rid of this awkward island right here. Sometimes I get the kind of tunnel vision when I'm building parking lots, and this is the result. The other thing that was mentioned in the comments a number of times is that there are Aldis in locations near folks where there is indeed this access from the highway. And I took a look at a few locations that I have frequented in the past myself, and indeed they do have that access in many occasions. So Aldi must be excellent at negotiating these. We are going to live with it, even if we don't love it. Oh, and as I am in the middle of redoing parking lots, we have an earthquake. So this earthquake, it has occurred over in this area, which doesn't really have anything happening. So hopefully we're okay. Hopefully we're okay. Just going to have to keep an eye on that. So it's centered over there. That doesn't mean that the whole region isn't going to suffer. Well, we're going to need to really keep an eye on this. We don't have any disaster response buildings at all. So that is a huge problem for us. And you can see the rift opening up. We can see the ocean. This is a significant earthquake. Holy cow. Well, the shaking has stopped. So let's see what's happened. And I think the best way to do that's going to be to come in here. We'll look at destruction. Johnson Aggregates is okay. Otter Lake is okay. And over here, we're getting pretty far away. So I would think that we are okay. So I think, yep, everyone's good. Dodged a bullet. We are going to have, I wonder if we're going to have a tsunami from this. Maybe not. It'll be over here anyway. It'll be contained. So, back to parking lots. Okay, so this is a significantly uglier parking lot, but I do think it fits the bill. We are going to provide that other access out of here. Okay, so this is significantly better. I would think that Aldi would have lobbied to have some sort of control over the vision from their site. And that was something that was brought up a number of times in the comments as well. And I think that that was a really good observation. There's no way that Aldi would have simply been okay allowing their site to be view obstructed from these buildings right here. You'd assume that they would want some sort of clear access. Maybe they promise some sort of park in the future. For the time being, just leave it empty. Sometimes you'll have these lots sit empty for quite some time. Interesting. That is not a movement I was hoping to prioritize. I think even though Aldi would want this movement, that is not a movement that they would be very excited about. And as a result, I may just sever that. And truthfully, I am becoming less concerned about this view and more concerned about what I'm doing to Main Street. So I think that we are going to ignore Aldi's desires because their desires bluntly aren't that rational. So Mulligan after Mulligan after Mulligan after Mulligan, but what would this build be without them? Sometimes you spend a whole bunch of time on the journey only to find out that you were where you were meant to be the entire time. And that is our experience today. This is exactly where we were supposed to be. There we go. Just wanted to get this level so we don't have loading vehicles. It looks like they're on the ground. Looking very good. Feeling very good. All right. So we've got a lot of other stuff we want to get to today. And I want to start out with, really an American classic. Something that I think would mean quite a bit to the community. That is, interestingly, from Argentina. So what we're going to do is bring in this diner. So this is Trixie's American Diner from Buenos Aires, Argentina. So kind of interesting that this asset is from there. I'm going to temporarily place it here. We'll take a look at it and then we're going to add it along the highway here. You can see, even though this is from Buenos Aires, it really does capture the way that an American diner looks and feels. And I would totally expect to see this anywhere in America. So we are going to go ahead and we're going to create a parking lot for this. Now, one thing I've clearly not done is respected the topography, and I'm paying the price. Should always pre-grade a site. It's totally rational. It's what would happen in the real world. It wasn't even much terrain in the game. It absolutely despises it. So we'll make a couple of slight modifications here. The other thing is, I've obviously made this way bigger than it needs to be. So let's go ahead, get this into place. And I'm going to shrink this up. This is way too big. Okay, so now that we have this set up, I do want to think about the spawn points. Right now, everything's coming right to the front. That is clearly not where we want our trash to occur. So let's go ahead. We'll get rid of garbage truck. And we will add that to the back. And truthfully, I probably should have shrunken this up just a little bit. We could have pulled this significantly tighter, but rather than let perfect be the enemy of good, I think we're going to allow a little bit of imperfection here. I do want to get some tables. Oh, there we go. That is exactly what I wanted to avoid. So let's go back in. Cargo truck clearly needs to go to the same place. And I want to get some tables and chairs. And last but not least, I do want to add some landscaping around here because, again, this is quintessential Americana, and I want to make sure we are nailing that aesthetic in this particular area. Okay, and here is the finished product. I think it feels pretty darn good. You could come in, pull in here, pull up a chair, eat on the outside, have a floating tree, whatever you prefer. So I like this. So this is low density commercial. It does have workers. I'm going to set this to be historical so it doesn't change. Love it. So there are more things that little towns like this have, including fast food restaurants, often right off the main drag and often right on kind of the edge of the community. So we're going to add something like that right now. So we have a fairly basic McDonald's, and we're going to add that to this area as well. And the way that we're going to do that is we're just going to come up here to use. Let's take a look at our terrain. I have not been doing a great job of that yet today. You can see that there are only a few places that are suitable for this without grading. We're going to grade a little bit here. That'll be the way that we handle this. This isn't an insurmountable height to deal with. So let's go for it. And rather than changing this road, we are going to leave this as highway. We're not going to allow people to park on this. But we are going to allow a bit of zoning here. Of course, it's not going to allow me to just upgrade it. So what I'm going to have to do is upgrade to a different road type and then convert it back. Now we're good. So I want to have a very small parking lot. So we're going to come through here and I will again I was using big parking lots. Now I'm just back to using my traditional parking lots that I like to use, that I've been using since Bluffside Crossing. And we'll go up about 3 U's is what it's saying. I'm going to pause this temporarily. I don't love doing this, but we're going to have some power issues. And they're completely unavoidable at this point. So we're going to roll with it. So what we're going to do is we'll run a bit of parking up the side and along the front and along the outside. And I'm not sure that's not big enough for the building. So I will need to pull this back. Round 2. Sometimes you got to make changes. Okay, so we've got this. The heights are a little bit off, but we can fix that with Move It. You know, sometimes with the Fine Road tool in particular, I find myself going up or down 3 meters kind of randomly. And my guess is that my shortcuts are a little bit off. Not the end of the world, not great either. But a way to compensate is certainly some Move It action. So that's what we're doing. And this building is complaining about water, but we know that it has some. It'll be fine after just a little bit of time. Now, we're going to add in some accessible parking. I'm leaving the inside row empty for the drive-through. You see the sign right there, so they'd come through around here, pick up windows. So we clearly want the parking to be on the outside, even if that's less convenient for the patrons. There we go. And of course, you can't have a McDonald's without a gigantic McDonald's sign. So we are going to find the absolute best one that we have. That one's kind of old looking. Oh, that's a drive-through sign. Interesting. So they have both of these generally. So you'd see one right here pointing. Yeah, go in here. That's how you get in. And then you'd have another one maybe pointing in so you can circulate around. Now here we've actually got all of our drive-through stuff. Just place that right about here. There we go. And lastly, I guess this is the sign that we have. So it's the sign that we'll go with. It's a little bit old looking in my opinion, but it'll work out just fine. And you'd imagine that this would be a fairly popular restaurant in town. McDonald's would likely want some landscaping, nothing over the top, probably just something right here to make it look a little bit more attractive. We're gonna go pretty Spartan here and just some bushes. We'll make that a pretty solid hedgerow. And McDonald's is pleased with the work that they've done. They think that this is plenty good enough. Now, we are going to require a little bit of landscaping back here. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. And the reason is the headlights from the drive-through and from people circulating around here would potentially shine back into this area. That is not acceptable, considering this will be zoned for residential. So we'll have just a thick row of trees here. We might even require some fencing, some 6-foot tall fencing. So sometimes if you see things like this and you wonder why, it is simply to block that light. So since we've already done some work here to make this an area that will develop, why don't we get this upgraded and bring some development in here? We still have a ton of residential demand. We are going to do a little bit with that, but there are a few things that I want to take care of first. And I had a lot of things that I wanted to cover in this episode. And it's always one of those things where I've got to balance things a little bit and figure out what I want to get to more than anything else. And today is definitely going to be one of those days where I need to prioritize the buildings that I'm building. Now we're going to go pretty dense back here, Fairchild dense, and have a lot of housing units in close proximity to one another. The primary reason for that is we're close to downtown. This is the most walkable part of the area. would anticipate that this would be the area where you'd expect that density. Now, I did see a couple of things here in terms of where things are loading. Where, again, at a spawn point, get rid of garbage and cargo and put those in the right location. So I worked at McDonald's a million years ago, and I'm trying to recall exactly where the truck went. And I want to say it just pulled up along the side here, and there was a door. Yep, right there in the back. That's where it would. So the truck would sit right here. You'd have to pull around it, and then everything would go back here into the coolers near the drive-through window. Coolers would sit right about back here. So that's why there's all the HVAC units there. Lots of interesting things. So there we go. Again, we have a little bit of property here that we could develop. McDonald's would absolutely not want to see development right up to their borders. For McDonald's, they're a gigantic real estate company, truthfully. So we are going to listen to them a little bit because they likely have some pretty fancy lawyers that can overwhelm us. So we are going to do a bit of listening. And we'll extend this road down just a little bit. It'll end. Why don't we extend it to McDonald's and have the city really take its shape after that road. And there are many other things that I wanted to add, but there's one thing that I think rises above all of them, and that is the multifamily housing. We've seen a significant housing need throughout this entire community. And one of the things that the Ashland Development Company has noticed is that there's not very many apartments throughout the entire area, and they want to change that. One of the places that they've targeted for multifamily because of its proximity to both the reserve base and the airport, which has a number of employees that are here, not the full month. They want to be able to live here and have a home base, but they also want to ensure that they have flexibility. And renting is going to grant them that flexibility. Now, one of the interesting things that you always hear at a public meeting when multifamily is discussed is you hear a lot of talk about the types of people who will live at multifamily residential buildings, the type of neighbors that they will make, the amount that they will care or not care about the community, and how their values are seemingly different than everyone who already lives within the community. Now, these arguments are pretty quickly diffused are sometimes quickly diffused when you point out that you need to have a selection of housing that covers the entire spectrum of someone's life. So they're born into potentially a single family home. They grow up, they either get a job, they go right into the workforce, they rent an apartment, or they go to college and they rent an apartment. If they go to college, they get an entry-level career, and they end up living in an apartment. And then from there, regardless of your career path, you save up for a while you're living in your apartment, and you get that down payment for your first home. So a lot of times people aren't thinking about this when they come up with the arguments that people have different values. Well, these are your future neighbors potentially, and you don't want them in the community because you're afraid of what they might do to your property values. Often it's a real fallacy, the arguments that are being brought up, and you can diffuse them with just a little bit of common sense. That said, common sense isn't always common, and sometimes you'll have folks that come at you with all sorts of nonsense, and all you can do is listen, try to do your best to make them feel a little bit better about the situation, but sometimes you're not going to be able to bridge that gap. So you do your best in those situations. Sometimes your best isn't necessarily going to be enough. That said, we are going to build some apartments here. The neighbors have been very upset. They're not satisfied with the results of the proposal that the Ashland Development Company has brought up. But the city understands that it needs tax base, and apartments bring in a great deal of tax base. Now, one of their arguments, besides the fact that the apartments will bring crime, they're going to overrun the schools with children, both of those are false, is that that renters also don't pay taxes. Also false. Renters pay taxes through their rent. The landlord passes that right through. So these are all things that we're bringing up as planners to the residents of the city. And unfortunately, sometimes you're just not going to be heard. This is one of those situations. So we're building a fairly contentious apartment complex. Now, this is within close proximity to downtown, walkable to some jobs, and still with great access to this state highway. So let's get building. First thing we're going to do is apparently look at that airplane. We're going to come through, and I want to add a small loop in here. Let's turn off our road guidelines. We'll just have our grid. We'll just bring this up. So right about here. And I picked up this great asset from King Leno, always my favorite. So it is the Harbor Apartments. So it comes with two separate building types. So we've got this larger building, this smaller building, and then it also comes with a leasing office. These are upscale apartments. That said, it's not going to matter to some people. So we're going to do our best to make this a rational place to live, and a place that if someone were maybe a little bit less cantankerous about this, they would understand and appreciate the benefit of this housing to the community. So the other place I could see this potentially being appropriate would be in a place with a view. Unfortunately, as often happens, those places are already completely occupied. So we are fronting these buildings to the street. So you see that there's an entryway there, and then behind them, we have this lovely little play area. I like that. And then we'll get rid of this, and we will bring in some more of these 4x4 apartment buildings. Now, I want to add parking directly behind these. So what we are going to do is we'll add one of these small parking areas. Need to have anarchy on for this. There we go. And we're likely going to need to redo this roadway configuration, but for the time being, this is how we're going to solve issues. I'm going to also look at these a little bit more closely. I think that these should be closer to the building. Actually, no, we're going to landscape along there. This is a good spacing. So in an effort to demonstrate to the community that this is a higher quality development, the developer has even offered to place EV parking in. So that's something that these days gets tossed around quite often as a way to show that a development is high quality. Add EV parking. It's forward thinking. So, generally I look at this as a fairly positive thing myself. That's one of the things that really separates developments or rentals from properties that people can purchase, is that often amenities like that are just missing, and it makes it impossible for someone to achieve the same quality of life. So it is definitely a good thing to have amenities like this. One of the nice things about using this parking mod is it makes it very easy to figure out exactly where you're supposed to go. Now, what we're going to do, I want to add in both the leasing office, some of those other 2x2 buildings, and a swimming pool. So the way that we're going to do this, I'm going to place this here temporarily. Then we're going to spin this around. So this is probably far less parking than would be required. Again, this would have to be, we're going to have to assume that there is some underground parking associated with this development. Otherwise, it really just wouldn't work. At least not in this context. So there we go. We're going to delete these and reestablish them. Then we'll tuck the leasing office back in the corner here, and then add some of the amenities back here right next to that. You figure they'd want to have eyes on some of the amenities, for better or for worse, and we're going to keep them back there as a result. I think that we can start to use some of our vanilla assets for this. Now, one of the problems is, like, this community pool would be a great fit. I don't have enough money. So we have been rapidly losing money as we go through and work on some of these smaller builds. So we're going to just need to be aware of that. So the water in this area would likely be a main up to here, and then it'd be private all the way back. There's no way the city would want to take this on in this location. There would be some locations where the city could consider taking on public water main and private developments. This just really, because it only serves as development, there's nothing behind it. This wouldn't be one of those scenarios. I want to take a look at this and look at realistic population. So this says it's one household. This is one household. We're going to need to fix that. So it's saying when we take a look at this, one floor, one household, that's not at all right. We will look at vanilla. They're saying this is 41. I like that too. There would be a ton of housing in here. Now, I mentioned that these types of buildings generally do not create a whole bunch of students. One of the reasons why is you end up with a lot of young professionals or even retirees that are downsizing their homes and moving into places like this. And as a result, it's always, kind of one of those weird things when you're talking with people about this sort of development, because they're generally pretty benign in terms of their impact on the school system. They generate revenue for the community. They're a good thing. So it's tough. So we are just kind of bleeding money right now. And I'm going to take a quick look at that because this is not sustainable. I think it's good to have this open and to see if we're overdoing it on any particular part of the city in terms of the utilities. And it looks like we're overproducing electricity, and that is costing us quite a lot. So we are going to bump this down just a bit. You see that immediately helps. Transit's also very expensive. Our airport is very expensive. And we actually do not have an airline headquarters. And, I was reluctant to add it, but I almost think with the airport's DLC, we might want to do that. The other building that we didn't add is the museum, which is something that we do have access to right now. And I do think would really fit the build well, but we aren't using it just right now. We're going to need to think about some of these things. And the main reason I think that we're going to need to do that is the airport's just costing us too much money to exist all by itself in this existing state. That said, the Aviation Museum is very expensive. And right here, the airport headquarters, which we absolutely need, is also very expensive. I think that we are going to add this, but I don't think we're going to do it now. This would fit in our capital, but not necessarily in Ashland, certainly not in Fairchild, and I don't want to just plop it on the side of the airport. That's pretty unreasonable. So what we're going to do is we'll just go into the budget and we're going to just crank this down for the time being. That'll save us a lot of money. We really need to save money right now. And you can see that immediately helped us with our income, which means that maybe we can finally get our pool and park back here. So, definitely a precarious situation. And those are the sorts of amenities I would absolutely expect to see at an apartment complex like this. Then I'm going to back these trees off a bit. We're going to add a fence around here, and then we're, after that, going to add some trees back. Now, I am letting this run at a high rate of speed, of simulation. Really, that's to gain money, because we are broke. So, if there's anything I can do to improve the financial situation and state of the build, I'm going to have to do it. And we're going to put the park fence around here. We'll turn off grid, but leave angle on. I'm going to turn on anarchy too so I can connect this to the side of the building. Also turn off road length. Now, because I don't know exactly where I want this to connect up, we'll just start it over here and do the exact same thing. And then just meet up with that back there. Looking very good. Now, I'm going to find a tree that I really want to repeat through here. Something that's not too large. I like the looks of this one. And we're going to just kind of repeat these along the side here. They're not overwhelming. They wouldn't block too many of the windows. Now, we need some parking over here. I'm just going to steal this easy little parking lot. And that can be some parking used for this building. It's across the street, not the end of the world. I think we're going to be totally fine with that. And now I really want to nail all the landscaping through here. So it's going to be, very attractive in an effort to ensure that anyone that were to come here really wants to live here. Oh my goodness, we have a thunderstorm in the area. And second disaster. So we're going to have some problems. We are going to have some problems. Well, we can still landscape in a storm. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, I suppose. So we're gonna do it. Imagine these landscapers outside doing their job. All of this pandemonium. Clearly, we're now having power issues. So a power line somewhere got struck. Ooh, water got struck. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Okay, we've got to figure this out. You can see that right here, there's no longer a connection. Okay, so I am going to add one of these rural lines. Yep, there it is. You can see it. That's what got severed. So that is the connection that's missing there. We now got Belmont back online. This is also a problem. Now we've got that back online. That should help us with our power issues over here. We've got this connection over the river. That's also bad. Oh, there's so many segments. So there we go. Now we've got the hydroelectric dam connected to Shorewood again. Our main transmission line here is broken. So I'm going to pause this for a minute, which is problematic for a number of reasons. I can't really tell what I'm doing then. But I'm killing this whole city. I'm going to start losing population in just a second. And there are so many small segments that are cut off at this point that it's really kind of been a struggle to get this to work. So I'm going to forgive myself if this isn't the height of realism at this particular point in time, because we just want the city to not die, which is kind of where we're at. There are certain crossroads where you feel it, where you feel like your build could be done. This is one of those times for me. I'm very curious. Somewhere, this is our main problem, I believe. This last line right here. Yeah, there are a number of broken connections. Now, if you work for a power utility, I want to know just how reasonable it is to have a bad storm and have this many lines go down. It was clearly a bad storm, but this kind of feels next level. like death to the region. Bad. All right, so we'll run this again. Belmont, there you go. There we go. And up here where we were at, I this has been a traumatic experience. So, and we still water, please. Well, that was something. that was something. That was really something. So we're gonna finish off. I'm gonna stop landscaping like there's gonna be a tomorrow, because I think if this has taught us anything, it's that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So let's get this moving. Okay, so now you'd come in here, and yes, these buildings are larger than other buildings in the community so far, but they're larger for a reason. And I truly do believe the residents of this building would make good neighbors. And I think it's really a shame when you got to convince people of that. But it is a part of planning. It is reality. It just you kind of got to work with it. And then I want some more dense landscaping back here. So we are going to go ahead and I'll just copy that just for the time being. I don't know exactly where this is going to end just yet. For the time being, that feels good to me. Feels very good. And what we've done with the roads here is really ensure that we're not setting this up to be a really dominant view. What you see is you see a bigger building, but it's not, it doesn't make this feel like the public road turns into a private road into this development. That's what I was trying to avoid here. So I think we've done mostly a good job of that. I am going to finish the landscaping now and hope for the best. And then we'll have a brief city tour. Okay, and we have really rounded this out well. I think that it looks very believable in terms of an apartment complex. King Leno always does an excellent job with his assets. All you got to do is give it a little bit of thought, and I think you can have a pretty spectacular result. Set the population, and check it out. Doing really well. Doing really, really well. But we're going to finish off with one quick thing that I do think is important, and that's cell coverage. So that's something that is not really contemplated in the game. We needed to wait till we had a little bit more money. So we're going to add that in areas there's a bit of height where the land is potentially not quite so valuable. And this asset doesn't do anything, but it makes me feel good. So that's what we're going to do. We'll add one at each of these areas. We want to be a little ways away from residential buildings. The height will help us reach more areas. We would also expect to see these potentially along the interstate, and that'll help cover this community as well, and one there as well. So I think that that is helpful. And then last but not least, we do need one near Otter Lake as well. And there are certainly cell towers that blend in better. Some look like trees. If you're in a tropical area, they look like little palm trees. If you're where I am, they look like pine trees. They do a better job than that, but many look just like this as well. So some trailer park flooding, which is unfortunate. Let's see if there's anything we can do to improve that. Just a second. That is the height of realism as we just boost those up. That said, these are mobile homes, so we should be able to backfill the land if this were a problem. I guess we'll look at the bright side. And with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. And I cannot wait to see you in the next one, where we are going to continue to build out Fairchild and do quite a number of interesting things there. Can't wait to see you in that one. Take care. Bye-bye.